talk about cityhood, when we became a city, I'd like to kind of take the clock back a little bit and talk to a little bit about how we got to becoming a city and some of the things that happened prior to that time that I think were important to us becoming a city. Back in 2006, we met with the owners of the property that's now known as the Donaldson Chestnut property. It's located on Vermac at Chimney Dunwoody Road. And that property is the second oldest house in Dunwoody. It was built in 1867. It has 6 outbuildings, including the house. And it's very important to the history of Dunwoody. At the time, my wife Queenie and I were co-presidents of the Dunwoody Preservation Trust. And we met with the Chestnuts, and they agreed to sell us the property on a tax-advantaged sale basis. It was going to be, the sale price was negotiated at $1.2 million. The actual appraised value of that property was substantially higher than that. And we went to DeKalb County, who had green space money at that time from the 2005 and 2001 green space funds, and asked them if we could possibly get this funded by green space money. And Commissioner Boyer and Gannon agreed to put up $900,000, and Richard Stogner, who at the time was the chief executive or chief operating officer for Vernon Jones, agreed to put up the other $300,000 to purchase the property. And the agreement was that the Dunwoody Preservation Trust would sign a lease for $1 a year. We would manage the property and make it into a farm life museum. 2 years later, that hadn't occurred, and in February of 2008, we had not signed that agreement. I talked to Vernon Jones, who was still the CEO at that time, and he said, listen, we're going to move that house to South Atlanta. And I think that action probably was the most relevant action to getting the attention of the people of Dunwoody, that we needed to be able to control our own destiny. And to date, this is a big part of the mission that I have on the council, is controlling our own destiny and making sure that we can make decisions here locally that are relevant to our community. That decision was made, and it turned me around from being somebody that was trying to work with the county, trying to be a partner with the county, into somebody that was absolutely committed to becoming a city.
Some of my fondest memories about the startup of our city are some of the funny memories. And one of the funniest memories that I recall is the first year that we had Light Up Dunwoody, and we were a city, and the whole city council was invited to turn on this light switch for Light Up Dunwoody. And the light switch was this giant, looked like a giant candy cane pole. And as the city council was, all 7 of us were moving to turn the pole, we were waiting for the lights to go on and waiting for the lights to go on. And we were acting like, oh, this is so hard to move because it was taking so long for them to light up the Christmas tree and all the lights. And a couple of the smarty pants boys up front said, that pole's not real. And we all started laughing. Another fun memory that I have of the startup of the city, it was probably the most tedious, kind of difficult time. It was stressful because we had originally planned to use a corporation to help us start up the city, CH2M Hill, and in the end we ended up starting up the city ourselves. So the mayor asked Denny Shortal and I, along with our city manager, to select our service providers. Well, it was an incredibly time-consuming job, and I loved it, but the funny part about it was Denny Shortal and I spent so much time together. We were having breakfast and lunch together, reading through, we had to write RFPs during this process, and we had to read through 600 pages of proposals and evaluate 600 pages of proposals in less than 48 hours to decide who we wanted to interview. Then we went through the interviewing process with our providers. And over time, Denny and I started kind of acting like husband and wife. He would come in and lay all of his papers out and start taking up my space, and I kept pushing him back over, and he pushed the stuff back over. Anyway, in the end, by the time we got to the point where we were finalizing our contracts, one of the providers who we were working with said, do you guys know that you sound like husband and wife? And it was so funny because Denny and I had been spending more time together than I had spent with my husband in the past couple months, and he had spent with his wife in the past couple months. It's just a fond memory. We still kind of have that going today. We sit next to each other, and sometimes they'll start putting his papers and stuff over on my blotter, and you'll see me pushing them away. That's one of my fond memories, just spending time with Denny to write our RFPs, go through the proposals, and select our providers. It was a great experience.
I think I can't narrow it down to one. I'd have to say three co-equal sort of events. The first one being March 19th, 2008. After 3 years in the legislature, we finally got the cityhood bill passed in the afternoon. That was almost the thing that didn't happen, because right when our bill came up, basically Senator Saxby Chambliss was on the floor of the rotunda of the Capitol announcing his re-election campaign. And all the Republicans who had promised to vote for it literally came off the floor of the House while our bill was being heard to listen to Saxby. And basically it was going to come up for a vote, and after 3 years we knew we were going to lose just because the senator was trying to get reelected. It was a lot of scrambling. Fran Miller was up on the second floor of the balcony of the House yelling, Saxby will vote for you, just get those guys back up here. And we ended up getting them back in. The vote passed. It was a little bit of a scary moment, though, because 3 years worth of work almost went down the tubes on a whim. The second really is April 1st, 2009. After a lot of work and after only 90 days of prep time, Dunwoody rolled out the police department. Very proud moment for me. I know that 40 police cars rolling out at midnight with the sirens and the lights going, and actually people in Dunwoody seeing Dunwoody police patrolling the neighborhoods was just something we hadn't seen before. And I think it really was the most visible presence of the city government at that point. The third one, and that was April 21st of this year, 2010, was when, after 5 years in the legislature, we finally got the property and parks bill passed. And although we had a city government, although we had a great PD, we had a lot of things going for us. It really wasn't complete without the parks and those properties. And additionally, the $7 million worth of bond proceeds that are attached to Brook Run that we will be paying for, whether we got them or not. So I'm certainly glad that we got those, and really look forward to developing those into some real. We've got some diamonds in the rough there that I think the city's going to make great use of in the next few years.
Well, there are lots of stories you could tell about the legislative process and getting it through the legislature. The story I want to tell you is it takes place after we had gotten through the legislature and we'd gotten their permission to hold the referendum. And we were a few weeks before the vote. And the League of Women Voters had arranged for an evening where we would debate whether or not the city of Dunwoody should be voted on, yes or no. Up until that point, all the meetings had been more or less informational. My role in that evening was to provide information. So I led the evening off by providing information about what incorporation would mean and what services it would provide and what boundaries. So neither pro nor con. And then we got into the meat of the meeting, where we had one group headed by Denny Shortal, who was arguing in favor of cityhood, and then another group headed by Representative Jill Chambers, who was arguing against. And it was a packed house. It was highly charged, and 3/4 of the way through the evening, Denny Shortal is talking about how DeKalb has been providing very poor service. And one of the things he notes is that very few roads had been paved in Dunwoody in the preceding few years, but one of them was the small cul-de-sac street that Jill Chambers lives on. And in a very dramatic fashion, General Shortal, in a loud voice, said, "Representative Chambers, where I come from, the troops eat first." And the hall broke up into wild applause, and that was the moment of the evening. And of course, a few weeks later, an overwhelming percentage of the voters in Dunwoody voted to form the city. And that's the story.
One of the big things that I think brought our city together, and we came together with an idea that we would all back the cityhood with an 82% vote as we did, was we had a rally at the farmhouse, and I consider the farmhouse kind of the icon of Dunwoody. And that rally, we had just, I don't know, there was a couple of hundred people and all the press was here. And I think that day we laid down what we would do if we became a city to the citizens, and I think the citizens believed us because we were telling them the truth. And one of the things we would do is we would work on the zoning codes, how we could better protect the city from construction and buildings that had gone out of control. Number two, we would keep the tax dollars at home, and we would keep our taxes low, and we would then use that time to become good stewards of the citizens' tax dollars. And I think that is going to be the key to our future success. And the third thing we said is that we'd put together a police force that would protect the citizens and give them peace of mind without becoming a police state. And I think we've done that, all three of those things. That day I felt the tide turned as far as the cityhood. If I had any doubt previously, I felt the tide turned that day as far as us becoming a city and the positive vote that we've got out of the city. I felt the citizens all come together somehow that day. When we became a city, I think one of the things that was rather interesting is we were negotiating the contracts. We let the contracts for the three main vendors on I think it was the 24th of November. We took a break for Thanksgiving, and we started up on December 1st, that Monday. It was amazing to me that it all came off. We had a lot of loose ends, and I thought it came down, and we had our first meeting with Warren the 24th, and we all met everybody, and it was interesting to me that we were going to start a city in 6 days from that day. We just were meeting everybody, that we were going to be the key players. And then, of course, one of the keys is on March 31st at midnight when we rolled out our police department. In basically 4 months from the day we became a city. I think that earmarked us as a city. It earmarked us as someone who had lived up to the promises. We worked on the zoning, we worked on keeping our costs under control, and now we had a police department.